let me get to this matter that I talked with you about on off camera. It's a little unexpected to read that.
Yeah,
Unless
it's a little hard. My eyes are getting old.
well, DC Comics is looking for a new Superman, so if your eyes can do it, right? Or Henry Cavill, they pushed him out of there. I thought he did a great job myself, but oh well. I guess James Gunn, who doesn't live too far from here, by the way, has different ideas. But I digress. What I wrote here was I find it very concerning that this is. Let me scroll up just to be fair. Um, this is what we talked about, and I'll read it so that I don't leave anything out. I said that back here. I said Councilmember Taylor started out with 41,252 votes to Councilmember Towell's 39,654 votes for first choice votes. But when ranked choice votes were added, that changed to 56,841 for Sheng Thao versus 56,161 for Councilmember Taylor. But what's interesting is what is behind the reason for Sheng Thao's rise. An outsized number of ranked choice voting votes for Sheng Thao from fellow candidate Allyssa Victory. Now, of Allyssa Victory's 14,047 votes, 8,378 went to Sheng Thao. This is not the latest run, okay? So if anybody's looking at that, okay, this is not the latest run that was done a week ago. Just FYI. All right? But that does not damage what I'm about to ask, as you know. But I'll continue. And that was almost three times what Ignacio de la Fuente received from Allyssa Victory is one example, or about 59.64% or 60% of the total ranked choice voting votes Ms. Victory had to give. Why did that happen? And then I went back and I explained that in 2010, Rebecca Kaplan and Jean Quan famously teamed up to run for mayor of Oakland in the first year ranked choice voting was used. They campaigned for months. The final outcome was that Jean Quan got 2/3 of all second place votes, and the spread was directly attributable to their team up. And I refer to my interview with City Attorney John Russo, where we talked about the impact of that team up on the election outcome. And I have to actually fast forward to go back here a bit, which should be there. If this buffering would stop. If it doesn't, I'll just simply go ahead and explain what he said, because it looks like I'm not going to get any love from the buffer gods. So let me just stop that. What John had said was that at that time, Don Parada was the front runner. He received 35% of the vote. You might remember this.
I do.
Yeah. And John famously said, why this isn't coming up is whatever, but he said, look, in this video, he says, look, Zenny, the only way that Jean Quan could win is she got 2/3 of the second place votes, and that ain't happening. Well, it happened the next day. And he called me, he goes, Zenny, take that down. It's wrong. I said, what are you talking about? It's not wrong. You're a genius. And I write here, this time in 2022, the situation is different. Sheng Thao and Allyssa Victory did not campaign together for months. And on top of that, I asked Allyssa Victory if Sheng Thao was her second choice, and she said, quote, no, Greg Hodge was, unquote. But we both agreed that perhaps it was Shang mentioning that Allyssa was her second choice. But if that were the case, then Allyssa Victory should have picked up a large number of Sheng Thao ranked choice votes, but that never happened. And what did happen, from my perspective, numerically, was that a shockingly uniform pattern of percentage of votes was transferred from Allyssa Victory to Sheng Thao. 59.64%, rounding to 60%. That was true for the most recent run and the one the day before it. On that November 17th day, I vlogged Shang got 6,475 votes from Allyssa Victory, or about 60% of the 10,882 votes she had to give. That same percentage appeared yet again, it was actually about 59.5%, yet again, for the same transfer of votes from Allyssa Victory to Sheng Thao on November 17th, too. Moreover, the Allyssa Victory, was given the majority of her vote, giving the majority of her votes to Sheng Thao is in a giant-sized batch, is a pattern I noticed from the second day of ranked choice voting runs up to Friday. Okay?
Mhm.
While I did not check the percentage then on the second day, I would not be surprised if it came out to be about 60%. And these aren't runs I can go back and go into your system and check. I have to vlog them, and I vlog most of them, but not all of them. And I noticed this anomaly uh, a couple of days before I started to really zero in on it. Hence, but I did mention it in those previous videos. But I digress. And so, and I wrote in this interview with Allyssa Victory 2 days ago, and I'm not going to play it. He says, at the 5:30 mark, I note that she gave over 58% of her shareable ranked choice votes to Shang when I presented the run from Wednesday, November 16th. That's just less than 1%, far less than 1% difference from Thursday to Friday. Note that Allyssa does admit that Greg Hodge had her as number two, but says that people can vote however they want. That's what she says. For me, the point is, Alyssa's people had a weird pattern of picking Shang 58 to 59% of the time through the entire run. And then I go on to make sure this hits home intellectually. All right? I find it very concerning that the same 59.64% or thereabouts, rounding the 60% percentage of votes, was shared from Allyssa Victory to Sheng Thao for each of these runs each day, because you were releasing these runs by email daily.
That's right.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but in my opinion, that looks fishy. As if someone were pre-picking votes for Shang using a code that broke off roughly 60% of the votes and dumped them into Shang's column on a spreadsheet. One should expect an uneven or non-linear pattern. This one is far too machine-like. And then I write, why the uniform outcome on a per-run basis? That's to be investigated. It's way too weird, especially since Shang was not Alyssa's second choice, and their names are not even next to each other on the 2022 Oakland election ballot. And then I continue and I write, I want to make sure you understand the gravity of this problem. First, we presumably have votes counted each day for each candidate. Second, one should expect that the percentage of those new votes counted and shared in ranked choice voting to be different for each day of the vote count, right? In other words, they're different each day, but they come out to 59% on the end, okay? Right? Third, that's where the problem comes in, the vote. The percentage of those new votes counted and shared in ranked choice voting from Allyssa Victory to Sheng Thao is, for all practical purposes, nearly the exact same percentage each day. That makes no sense at all for that pattern to turn up 3 to 4 times in a row, unless, in my opinion, it was predetermined. But that's what happened. Your response, Tim.
All right. So let's talk about ranked choice voting and a little bit about our updates. I think the comment that says, that maybe have been how they campaigned, and that's what they may have asked their people, their supporters, to choose as their second vote. But people are allowed to vote how they want to vote, right? They're independent. So, I've been doing this for a while, as you know, and I've seen elections where it follows essentially a straight line on the percentage. And I've had people who say, well, that's how all elections should run. we should see the early votes on early votes and what we post on election night. We should be able to do like a statistical sample. Back from our statistics classes, we do a random sample, and that small percentage should just straight line project out at that rate, and that's how we should see what the outcome is going to be. I've seen some elections where that seems to be the case. It follows a straight line. I've also seen some elections where
voting?
For any voting, right?
I mean for ranked choice. That's why I say for ranked choice.
No, I'm just saying in general. Sometimes the early votes are mimicking what the rest of the votes come in at. Sometimes the early votes are not representative of what the later votes come in at, and we see divergence. So I've seen both cases, and I've seen arguments. You can imagine we hear people evaluating the elections in all sorts of different ways, and they expect to see things following patterns. Well, it isn't a lab. It isn't following, a predetermined pattern. Voters are voting the way they vote.
But I have to ask because I don't mean to be adversarial, okay?
I understand. I understand.
But Tim, it's weird to have the same percentage. If you and I are counting votes daily, and it's ranked choice, and these are transfers, right? Because it's ranked choice, we have to throw out the common elections because they don't apply. And my point is, because the obvious question comes up. Well, can we look back at the process and re-review this information as it came in to see how it's actually transferred, right?
Yeah.
Because again, I have never ever seen that. And what's the statistical chance of it being almost exact every single day that your sending runs, sometimes twice a day?
Yeah. So I haven't. Okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't dived into the specifics. So I asked you to send me your numbers, and I know you said you'd send me some screenshots. What I did do the first time you asked about it, as you recall, I sent you what I could see as the first round choices, and we did see a change in the number of votes. We saw a change in percentage for each of the different candidates on the first round. I haven't I haven't had the time to dive into the question that your observation, but again, I can't really answer it. I'm not equipped to answer it. I'd have to take a look deeper. But I have seen the patterns go straight and not change much. I've seen the patterns change. Again, we're dealing with a lot of different elections, and we have to take a look at, in those updates, how many votes we were really talking about as well. So again, I don't want to hypothesize without actually having a chance to do an evaluation. But, if we're dealing with a small number of votes from update to update with those particular candidates, we may not see a large change in percentage either, because there may not have been a large number of new votes.
Well, and not to be, I want to just editorial. Seneca, I'm not here to discuss the city clerk issue. That's not fair to Tim. It's an entirely separate issue for which I need to have the city clerk here to explain. Okay, Tim doesn't know about that. I don't think so. No, I know he doesn't. I'm being jocular. Okay.
Okay.
But my point is now back to the path, as they say. I want to emphasize this. It's not that there's a difference. It's the fact that it's, for practical purposes, no difference each day.
From a percentage standpoint, right? I mean, the number of votes did increase. It's just that the percentage didn't change dramatically.
The percentage transfer is frighteningly the same. Now, again, if it were, 5% difference, 10%, you have a difference. You expect that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it reflects, a choice. I'm not talking about that. And that's where a lot of people get it wrong. I am talking about the fact that this thing comes out as almost the same each and every time, and it's like Bugs Bunny is back there basically with his carrot, fooling around with things.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I can tell you nobody's fooling around with things. The system is on an isolated system. It's been tested. It's been certified by the Secretary of State. The algorithm that we use for ranked choice voting, as I said, isn't just being used here. It's the same one being used over in San Francisco. So um, uh, now the question is, can we explain the anomaly? Um, I don't know. We'll have to take a look. But my explanation for it would be is that that's how our voters voted. It may not have come out with what you've expected, but that is what the voters have chosen, and that's how the votes were distributed. So, I mean that is going to be my answer. It's that
and again,
we reflected the transfers the way that the voters voted.
see, again, in my opinion, and it really is that when it all comes down to things, it's my opinion
Right.
regarding the data run. Okay, but in my opinion, it's not a matter of who the voters chose. Again, I say this, and I want it to hit home. You and I can count votes every single day. One day, Shang gets 80% of what Allyssa got sent over. The next day, it's 20%. And we go through this over a 5-day period, and it averages out to be 59%. You know what I say? Bravissimo. Awesome. Right? But to have the same damn percentage every single day, right? It's like, and I'm sorry to, make your ears do that.
Well, I do. As you're talking it through, I do want to make sure that maybe I want to make sure we're still on the same page.
Sure.
Yeah, let's talk it through just a little bit, just
Yeah,
to make sure
absolutely.
we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Because the run of ranked choice voting at the end of each day is exactly that. It's essentially a simulation. I've been trying to actually look for the best. You froze on me, Zenny. Are you still there?
I'm still here. No, I
Okay.
kind of my head, and it's kind of like.
Okay. I've been trying to figure out what the best way to call it, because it's not official, right? It's at that point in time with the number of votes, we run the simulation, and it shows if this is where we stop the election, this is how the ranked choice algorithm would report the votes that we've captured so far.
So I'm confused. You're
Yeah, that's where it gets a little interesting. You mind if we kind of unpack that a bit?
I would appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So each time we do an update at the end of the day, we start the ranked choice voting algorithm over again with everything that we had tallied up to that point plus the new. So it's not like we're just tallying the new votes and tacking them onto the ranked choice algorithm. No, it's what we've been asked to do, because there's different ways that we could do this. We could wait till we get every vote counted. Nobody likes this. We could wait till we have every single vote counted and then post the results and then run the ranked choice voting algorithm once, and everybody would see how it works. But we kind of live in a time where everybody wants to say, well, where are we now, right? We live in this. We live in this kind of an instant. I need an instant update. Where is it now? What's changed? We like our kind of. I'll use our sports analogies. ESPN ticker. We need to know what the score of the game is right now. Is it going to get flipped? How close are they at this point? So we enjoy that. That's what people want. They're looking for, with the way that we're getting so many votes in by mail and so close to election day, you can see that it's taking us longer to get to the final vote. So people are, well, what are they going to post today? Or what is the new posting going to look like? Has something changed in the race? So we've got that setting. So ranked choice voting, the algorithm goes against every vote that we have in the system at that point in time. So it's not like I freeze what the last update was. We erase that from the previous day. That was a snapshot of if I ran the algorithm yesterday, this is what the race would look like.
Can you explain what it means to run the algorithm? Because it sounds to me like you're saying it's a simulation, and you did use the term simulation.
I did that. I'm trying to from the standpoint of voter education. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to, because algorithm seems so computer, right? And I've been told that maybe simulation is a better way to put it, because it's not the final results until I certify, right?
Well,
So
except here's the thing, though. As a guy who built a computer model of the Oakland A's, which could be used in the classroom from 2003 to 2010, when Michael Bean killed my game, shame on him. But that's another story entirely, okay?
you'll have to tell
Simulations,
me about it.
yeah, simulations are algorithms.
Correct.
I built an algorithm to model what happens with ticket consumption with respect to economic performance in the model, right? And go on and on and on. All right, there's 946 equation sets. Okay, point I'm making is it's essentially the same, but what we're talking about here aren't people. We're not talking about robots. We're talking about people who cast a vote and they made a choice. And to my mind, that's something that shouldn't be simulated. That should be just actual. Boom, boom, boom. And we should have a real time able way of counting it. But it sounds like to me you're saying we don't have that.
Yeah, so what we have is, because we at that point in time don't have all the votes in the system, right? We're still counting votes. So let's say it's Monday and we're at 5 o'clock, and I want to give people a snapshot of where everything is at that point with what it is that we have counted so far, right? So for all of the traditional races, they're going to get where they are with the first count, because there's not choices, right? So for the yes no measures and so on, we're going to see how they're doing, and are they close, are they getting closer? So we're comfortable with that, right? Now it's an algorithm, so we have now got so many votes in with all of the different choices. So Monday we have a certain number of votes in. Well, so that's now in the system. And the next step, since you understand code, is, okay, we've got it in the database. We now have all of those votes to that point in time in the database. Have the ranked choice algorithm, which is another program, call it an app, run it against that data so that we can post, given what we have in the database right now, what would the results be? And so then when we get to Tuesday, now we've added a certain number of additional votes into the database, right? We've been able to scan more, and we then we've got the database with a new set. I mean, it's got the ones that we had on Monday plus some additional ones, and we run the algorithm or the app against that database, and we say, now Tuesday, ranked choice voting against what's in the database now would look like this.
Yeah.
So if there's not a whole lot of new votes added into that race, then as we start to get more votes, the percentage is probably not going to change as much, right?
Yeah. Question.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that there's an algorithm that's running against the database implies the existence of an error term. Has
An
anyone?
error term?
Yeah. In other words, since you're not actually manually sitting there and counting votes as they're split, all right, mechanistically, all right, it begs the question: is the algorithm properly operating to represent what you and I and a bunch of other people would do, which is basically sit down and hand count these votes? Okay, Alyssa's vote goes to Shang. Alyssa's vote goes to uh, Peter Liu, or
Yeah.
you right? You get the call. And
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. The the algorithm again, and I'm going to go back to our discussions at the beginning. There's some very smart people up at the Secretary of State that have evaluated, tested, and certified that. I keep calling it an algorithm. I just want to make that's what we call it. You want to call
a
it an
lot of people do.
application. You want to call it a program.
Sure.
But the Secretary of State has, fully vetted and certified that program that we use, just like they've certified the ImageCast X, just like they've certified everything else in the system. And they've said that it tests and does exactly what you said. If we did it manually, we would come out with the same outcome as what the algorithm is doing against the data in the database.
But it begs the question though: did anybody do that kind of evaluation for the device as used for this election? Because here's why I say that. I you know I've been at this matter quite a while, and whatever label you put on who or does what is like, okay. It's the process and the math. That's all I care about: the process and the math, and
Correct.
and that's what I'm trying to drive home with everybody. Stop thinking about politics and left, right, and all this stuff, and start thinking tech, because this digital divide is going to wreck you if you don't pay attention to it and start asking detailed questions. It's not an insult of you at all. You're a great person.
No.
I'm talking about what seems to me to be a question that needs to be asked even at the level of the Secretary of State.
Right.
Hey, did you evaluate this particular device against a real-time equivalent of you and I sitting down and actually counting? Because if there is a difference, Tim, that is an error term. And it sounds
Right.
like that exists.
It does exist. Yeah, the Secretary of State has gone through the level of vetting, I believe, that you're talking about.
Okay. But you're
And
not
so,
certain. But you're not certain.
no, I am certain that they've gone
Okay.
through the vetting.
Okay.
And then we have our logic and accuracy testing, which, gives some degree of testing as well at the local level. And then we have our 1% manual tally that we do. And I think you're familiar with that. We randomly select 1% of all votes, and we hand count that 1%, and we report that up to the Secretary of State. And for this election,
Ranked choice voting, though, because we're talking about
even for
ranked.
and even for the ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Because again, it's weird. It still needs to be checked that you can have a near exact same percentage coming out every run. I don't know. There's this popular saying, "Who does that?" Right? Who does
Well,
that?
Zenny, I understand your concern. I'm telling you what
I understand. Right.
safeguards are in
But
process
you
in
agree it needs to be
place.
checked out. Then you agree it
What's
needs to
that?
be. You agree it needs to be checked out.
You'll send me what you have. I understand what you're talking about. We'll take a look at it. I'm very confident that the system is doing it properly, that it's counting properly. But we can take a look. Send what you have.
Yeah, because see, what you should be able to do, right, is you should be able to go back um, and reevaluate the run again and say
Well,
what did it.
and
If
I
it's possible to do, say what did it do here?
well, we've talked about, Zenny, I think, as well as we've made the cast vote record,
Yeah,
and we talked about that, and I'll just describe what that is.
well, you're going to send me
Uh,
the information.
yeah, I'm sorry about that. I can send you the cast vote record.
See, we both were supposed to send each other things, right?
It's been
What?
busy, Zenny. Okay. So the cast vote record is every single vote as we've recorded it in the database. So that's on request. That's publicly available. We can give that out, and you can see what the recorded choices were for every vote. So it's not just us looking at it. That's, for full transparency, that's available so people can take a look. If they want to run it through their statistical analysis, they can take a look at it. But that shows how all of the votes were cast in all of the different choices.
Yeah, that and on each day. Does it date
Don't know that I think I'm not sure that it shows a timestamp. I can't answer that. We'll have to take a look. I wouldn't want to on camera say it without knowing it.
Yeah, because I'm really interested in why that same percentage for each run came about.
I understand what you're driving at.
Yeah, I'm not sure that what you're sending me will get at that.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know if we're going to be seeing that through the cast vote record.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is that the safeguards that
we have a problem.
I don't know that we have a problem, Zenny. We have to check into things to see what's going on. You have an observation. We need to take a look at it. So I don't know that it indicates that we have a problem.
Well, I hate to press you on this, but I mean, I'm sort of working backward. You agree that anomaly sounds unusual and it should be looked at. You said that, right?
No, I believe I said that we can see a lot of different things. I said that we will take a look at what you're talking about to the extent that we can.
But here's the thing, though. Again, understand if you and I are counting votes every single day, and at the end of our vote count, we should expect a significant percentage difference in vote transfers from one day to the next, even at different times during that day. But to get the same percentage, Tim, the same percentage is impossible.
So I don't know that I can agree to that, Zenny.
Okay, so give me an example. Give me an example that proves otherwise.
Well, so let's take a look at.
Seriously, because at some point you have to just kind of lean into the logic, or if you want to put our Star Trek hat on, what is the logical expectation that produces a pattern, as Mr. Spock would ask. One of my favorite character in history. Okay. Well, should be in this instance, all right. But it absent an explanation straight away, which you don't have.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to dive into your question, right?
Right. Which you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
It means that we have something just by your admission right there that has to be looked into. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So, so we can take a look at it, but I'm very confident that we're reflecting how the voter voted. So I'm very confident that the system is working the way it's supposed to. I'm very confident that the votes were transferred the way they were supposed to be transferred. We do get questions. So
right. I'm not concerned with how the voter voted. I'm concerned with this mathematical pattern. If it comes out, we analyze it, and hey, maybe there was a difference, right? Okay, and then the vote came out the same. Okay, fine. But the fact that there was a difference versus what was reported is a problem unto itself. I am not talking about who won the election. I am talking about a mathematical impossibility. I want that made perfectly clear. That's what I'm saying. Perfectly clear. Clear as a bell. That's got to be checked out because, look, everybody should want an election that looks like, hey, look, this is exactly what happened. And when you start using different formulas and programs, as we've talked about, sometimes if you don't properly test those formulas and programs, you don't know exactly how they're working under each circumstance.
Yeah, and I keep saying I'm confident that the algorithm, the program for ranked choice voting has been tested, and that we've used it. We're not the only ones that have used it. San Francisco's the one that is also using the exact same program. So we're all testing it. We're all looking at it. But the Secretary of State ultimately is the institution that has vetted it, has approved it, has certified it as saying that it is operating properly. So,
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing wrong with us taking a look at the concern, but everything that I see says that the system is working as programmed, it's doing what it's supposed to, and the outcome would be the same if we did it by hand.
because